Welcome everyone to the second episode of Satan and Coffee today. Today's just one hell of a day. With me now is the Gentleman Occultist once again, Mr. Blake Green. That is your last name, right? That's how you.
It
Okay,
is
at
indeed.
least what? Okay, I just want to make sure I'm not giving you assigning you a random color. Uh, um, so this episode, very different vibe from the first one. So the first one's a very serious episode. So in case you're not aware, Blake, so the first episode I did this morning was with Curtis Joseph and Hearse, or otherwise known as the Altar of Darkness. We were talking about animal sacrifice this morning, and how well most people that practice animal sacrifice probably shouldn't be. So it kind of started a stir up, and so I figured it was necessary to make an episode regarding it. Now, with Blake and I, what we're going to be doing is apparently our videos, the shorts that we did, stirred up some shit, and we have been getting relentless comments from Christians calling us out, saying we're going to go to hell, saying that, like, and it's all about, most of it from what I've noticed is about that one specific, like, Christians are so dead set on needing one specific place where you need to be absolutely afraid that your life is going to end and go there. You're going to go to hell. Like, they need the fear concept, right? Like, they can't exist without it. And so Blake and I, in part of our conversation in the last live that we did together, I mentioned that, the Bible doesn't actually mention hell as a place, right? Like, all of the things that are in there are metaphors, right? For, like when it talks about fire and destruction and things of that nature, it's talking about actual places that burned down because people were being sinful and this, that, and the next thing, but not like the hellscape that most people believe in. And I tried my hardest to be civil and show proof of argument, and me being me, it naturally degraded into just shut the fuck up. You're just, you know what I mean? You just don't know what the fuck you're talking about, So I reached out to Blake and I'm like, hey, how would you feel about doing an episode specifically targeted towards these individuals and explaining in detail with proof and receipts of our claims? And he's like, yeah, let's go for it. I love like destroying Christian ideals. So it's like, all right, let's do it. So I think we should start there, like, because that's kind of like the biggest one that everyone kept coming at me for, at least, is my comment in saying that the Bible doesn't discriminately mention hell as a place, but rather the ideal of separation from God and heaven being closeness to God. So you said you did the research here, so you were prepared. I know that for a fact, but maybe you can now prove to these individuals the claim.
Yeah. So specifically, and I should have brought my actual Bible. One of the things that I thought was kind of funny is one of the commenters said that, oh, look, it's a bunch of non-Christians telling other Christians what they believe. And I was, my first thought was, well, I was a Christian for the better part of 30 years. And so everything that I said comes from a post-fundamentalist Christian perspective of having those thoughts and indoctrinations built into me from when I was a kid. This isn't just a outsider scholastic perspective of Christianity. This is seeing Christianity for what it was when I was a child, going through the indoctrination, learning the dogma, and then coming out of it and realizing from a scholastic perspective where these ideologies actually come from. And initially, when I first learned about these concepts, it didn't necessarily make me not a Christian anymore. It was just a better understanding of where the lessons come from, where the metaphors and the mythology kind of blends in. And so, one of the earliest concepts that I discovered, especially when I was going through my deconstruction, is what the true concept of hell is and what the true concept of Satan is. Because even the Satan that modern Christians believe in is not at all the Satan of the Hebrew Bible, and it's an amalgamation of several different types of entities that are explained in the Bible. And what happens in Christian mythology, I'm going to call it, Christian mythology is a syncretic belief that is attempting to unify a number of various ideas into singular ideologies. So if you think about the God of the Bible is a syncretic figure that is influenced heavily from different types of other mythologies that becomes one singular individual. The same with Satan. Satan is not just one individual, even in the Bible. Biblical scholars even agree there is no one singular Satan. It is an amalgamation that eventually formed into one singularity of thought. And so that's what a lot of later Christianization did to ancient Jewish beliefs, is it formed all of these different thoughts that were also heavily influenced by Roman theosophy into what we now would consider one singular God, one singular Satan adversary, and one singular concept of hell, or this place of eternal damnation. None of these things that I'm saying right now are what actual ancient Hebrews and Jews believed. So if you go all the way back to what the ancient Hebrews believed, or the original Israelite tribes, they had a concept of a place called Sheol. And Sheol was basically this purgatory. There was no heaven, there was no hell. It was kind of this liminal space where everybody went. It didn't matter if you were good, didn't matter if you were bad. You could have been a king, you could have been a peasant. You die, you go to Sheol. And so Sheol is basically just the end. They talked about the body returning to the dust. And that was really what the early concept of the afterlife was. There was no eternal punishment. Any type of divine punishment happened while you were alive. Now, during the Second Temple Judaism, which is the fall of the First Temple going into Second Temple Judaism, they started incorporating ideas of messianic practices, which essentially was this concept of, there should be this Messiah who will eventually come and save us from this afterlife of eternal darkness. But it also incorporated concepts of punishment in the afterlife, because when the Israelites started getting destroyed by other nations, they believed that there should be some type of divine retribution in the afterlife. And so they started incorporating these thoughts of, messiahs coming to save them. They started incorporating thoughts of, oh, well, maybe there is a place where bad people go when they die, because, if they don't get punished now, how are they ever going to get punished? And then once early Christian belief started being influenced by Greek and Roman mythology, during my research, the thing that influenced our modern concepts of hell comes directly from Greek philosophy and Roman theology, because they already had concepts of an afterlife. They had concepts of the underworld. They had concepts of eternal punishment. And so these concepts heavily influenced the Christian version of hell. It was not influenced by Jewish thought. I had done some research also that hell was also influenced by the Norse belief in hell, like Hela, the goddess of the underworld, and they have a frozen punishment in an afterlife called hell. And even though they share the same word, it's not necessarily a direct, it wasn't directly influenced by the Norse concept of hell, even though they are very extremely similar. One is just a flaming afterlife, and one is a frozen afterlife. That's really one of the big differences. And so I guess stopping right there, before I continue my tirade, what were some things that you saw in the comments that you wanted to speak on? I mean, coming from, your own research or understanding.
Well, I think the thing that I think irritated me the most, kind of got my goat going, was a lot of these people's claim that we didn't understand the Bible, right? So I was able to come at them with scripture and explain it and like kind of rebuttal like the things that they were coming at me with scripture, and say like, these are being taken out of context. Jesus was referring to this place. He wasn't talking about hell. And like everything that they threw at me, like I kept trying to like trying to have like a civil debate, going back and forth. And I think what immediately kind of broke it down was that aspect of it, is that the claim that, well, you and I don't understand the Bible, like, and it's just the ignorance of the conversation, like the level of ignorance involved in those conversations, that kind of really broke it down for me, because it's like they say that they come from like a loving place and they want to save your soul, but then the
Yeah.
moment that you start presenting them with actual facts and information and rebuttaling the things that they're saying and shutting down their points of view and stuff like that, and you know they become aggressive, they start attacking you, and then there's one guy that was asking for sources, like, because he had told me, and I think it's the same guy you're talking about, that said that, I'll look more non-Christians talking about, what Christians believe in. It was the same
Yeah.
guy. He was talking about like all the like all scholars, like all, biblical scholars would laugh at you and stuff like that for what you're saying. It's like, you do realize that most scholars agree with everything that myself and this gentleman are saying. And the few scholars that you would probably end up quoting have been proven to be false and removed from the equation, but you guys seem obsessed with continuing to use them,
Yeah.
right, as proof and validation of the things that you're saying. And he's like, oh, well, we'll show sources. And it's like, I have sources for everything listed in every video that I do. You can go and you can use that. But, I'm not going to go out of my way to pull up sources on this, because off the top of my head, I can't remember their names. But I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, that, the few scholars that prove the Bible to be true text have been proven multiple times to be completely false and fabricated.
Yeah. Absolutely. I appreciate the legwork that that believers who are biblical scholars, I appreciate the legwork that they put in to try and rationalize what the actual beliefs are. But when it goes to scholarly consensus, the arguments fall apart. And most of the time, the publications of these findings are through religious publishers, anyways. They don't go through, full on scientific publishing, and so a lot of times they get published without any type of consensus from outside sources, and especially non-theistic biblical scholars. And so Christians will use these sites and sources and papers as, oh, well, this is facts and evidence. And then it's like, okay, well, if someone else read this, they could easily break down exactly where the problem comes. And but it's enough to read a headline and to believe that you're right. And as long as you feel like you're in the right, and it's confirmation bias, right? You want to confirm what your beliefs are, and there's enough people out there who consider themselves scholars that are okay with making sure that they sound correct enough to emphasize that, yeah, your belief is correct and we're right and you're wrong, and that's fine. I think it's disingenuous. I think it's dishonest. And I think that it doesn't make you less of a Christian to start asking questions about where these ideologies come from, especially if the foundations of these ideologies are so dangerous. The concept of needing to save people from this eternal damnation, and that every thought you think is sinful and every act you do is sinful, and condemnation of all these minorities because it's sinful. These are all dangerous concepts. And if you're going to push this as literal biblical historical fact, you need to be called out on it, and you need to understand better how to integrate the teachings of Jesus with, rationalizing the teachings of Jesus with what actual historical sources say. You can believe in Jesus all you want, you can follow his teachings all you want, but if you're going to say, oh, you're going to go to hell and you're a terrible person because you believe XYZ or you live your lifestyle XYZ, that is where your theosophy is going to start butting against morality. If you think back to like the ancient Israelites, there were many tribes in the Canaanite kingdom, and they all had different beliefs. There was no one specific doctrine. The Israelites that followed Yahweh are some of the most well known because they have all these texts that they developed. They were the ones who went to war against the other tribes. They genocided the other tribes of Israel. And what's interesting is, you had mentioned a little bit earlier about, oh, Jesus talked about this place. So one of the places Jesus talked about was Gehenna, and it comes from Hinnon, which is the valley of Henna, or the valley of the sons of Henna. And it was a physical location that was outside of Judea. And this place was used by many of the different tribes of Israel as a holy site. What ended up happening is the tribe that was the followers of Yahweh saw other Israelite tribes worshiping other Canaanite pantheon gods like Baal, like Moloch, and some of them were doing child sacrifices. And so the Israelites who followed Yahweh, Yahweh was pissed about this. Essentially, he did not believe in child sacrifices. I mean, rightfully so, honestly. He did not believe that children should be sacrificed to these other gods. And so they went to war a lot with these other tribes to purify belief systems. And so this land that was Gehenna was a battleground of different types of ritual beliefs. And when Jesus spoke about Gehenna, essentially it was kind of like if you were to reference some other historical site where a lot of horrible stuff went down. It wasn't like he was referring to this theological place of this afterlife. It was more he was referring to, oh yeah, we don't want to go to Gehenna, we don't want to go to hell because this place was associated with all this horrible spiritual impurity, and that's not where we want to go. If you're spiritually impure, you're going to go to Gehenna. And it wasn't, he wasn't referring to hell. He was referring to this ancient place, but he was using it in a metaphorical way, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Definitely. I mean, I actually just pulled up, the shorts on Instagram to kind of go through the comments because there's so many. I mean, it's like, and it's just kind of like regurgitation of the same thing. Like, I mean, some of them are also talking about kind of like, if you ask to see hell, you'll be shown hell. And then, so I kind of want to go a little anecdotal here for a second. So you talked about being a Christian for 30 years and then, you kind of learned your way almost out of it. Like you deconstructed it. So
yep.
I can't claim that I was ever a Christian. But there was a time in my life when I was much younger, I'd say 14, 15, that I really wanted to believe in the Bible. Like I really wanted it to be real. Like I did, like with all of my being, I wanted it to be real. But the way that I am, like I don't just jump into things and say, oh, it's real because I want it to be real. Like I needed something to support it. And so that's where kind of like my research came in. That's where I started reading things. That's why I ended up at that age. I read the Bible. I read the New Testament, the Old Testament, a couple of different translations, not just the King James Version, but a couple of other translations. I read the Torah, read the Quran, during that time period. And then, I kind of kept like looking into like, the actual history of everything, And then, looking into, my mother being a witch, so obviously I looked into paganism. I'm like, okay, where does this come from? And what are the parallels? Are there parallels? Why are, Christians consider, or why do Christians consider most pagans, regardless of path, to be Satanists and stuff like that? And every place I looked for a supporting idea, it fell apart more. And the deeper that I went into it, the more it fell apart. And that's kind of where I ended up where I am right now, right? Is because the Christians that believe in the things that they're saying look for biased sources to prove what they're saying, instead of actually doing the work and looking at every angle the way that you're supposed to for supporting facts. Because when I did it, it all fell apart. Everything fell apart. Every piece of history, everything I was told in the church, it's all either exaggeration, fabrication, outright lying, fear mongering. There's nothing to support it. Like, I mean, I'm not saying that the philosophy of the Bible, it's like when I look at the Satanic Bible, I look at the Satanic Bible as a book of philosophy. I don't look at it as religious doctrine. There are aspects of the Bible that, philosophically speaking, I think people can benefit from. I don't think it's inherently a bad thing. But it's the Christian and the church that make it a bad thing. And one of the worst things that I saw, in my opinion, on these comment sections was people claiming that the church is so important, making excuses for the church for covering up child abuse, like mass child abuse. We're talking, like, there's a case in France, I think it was, there's 300,000 kids over 70 years, 300,000 fucking kids over 70 years. And when they finally got called out on it, because the guy that ran the whole thing was like on his deathbed and fucking laughing about it and telling someone how to do it. I think it was something like $100,000 spread across the amount of people that were still alive. And then they swept it under the rug and nobody talked about it again. And then the response that I got to that pissed me off further, because the response that I got to that was, some of the most horrible cases of child abuse were perpetrated by Satanists and this, Satanism. And I'm like, there's something humanly wrong with you if that is your response. If your church is so fucking important that you're going to completely just deflect that entire thing and come out with some bullshit and say that the most horrible cases are perpetrated by Satanists, I'm sorry. Like, I'm hard up to find any cases really of legitimate Satanists actually causing harm to children.
Yeah. Every accusation is an admission. And I see that a lot in I mean, I know that as much as I enjoy the Mormon community, I have a lot of friends that are Mormon. There is so much that the Mormon church hides, especially in terms of child abuse. They have constant lawsuits going on, basically telling people like, hey, if you experienced abuse, call this number and stuff like that. I mean, it's so prevalent. I've seen videos where there were girls calling out their abusers. A pastor is standing at the pulpit getting called out by one of his victims, and he admits what he did, and everyone cheers him on because he is admitting it, and he is, like, seeking forgiveness from God, and they give him like a standing ovation, and all of these people like cluster around him and lay on hands and start praying for him, because he's going through temptation and he's going through all these things. And so it's like, okay, well, now we need to let God do his work through him. And, you know, no one went up to the girl and made sure she was okay. No one condemned the pastor when this happened. And it's so shockingly mind-boggling. I had friends that were Christians who they would do some of the most heinous things. And I would ask him, like, why are you doing this? And he's like, oh, well, you know, it doesn't matter because all I have to do is ask for forgiveness and I get forgiven. So it doesn't really matter what I do. As long as I ask for forgiveness, I'm good. And I'm just like, there's no way. Even then, I was thinking in my head, like, there's no way this is legitimate. Like, it's not like a get out of jail free card in your pocket whenever you need it. And even in the Bible, you know, God and Jesus both talk about, like, you have to live your life as a good person. It's not just, you know, works alone. You know, I can't remember what the specific line is, but faith without acts is dead or something like that. You have to have, like, it doesn't matter if you have faith, you still have to have action behind it. It can't just be, I believe in Jesus, I asked for forgiveness, and now I'm good to go. I could do whatever I want in between then. And I think that's the mindset that a lot of Christians have, is it is a get out of jail free card. It means that they can do literally anything that they want, even if it's, you know, giving into their temptation, if it's, you know, living sinfully, secretly. And then when they get called out for it, it's like, oh, it's okay, I'm going to ask for forgiveness. And as long as the congregation knows I'm a struggling sinner and I'm, you know, letting God work through me, then, oh, it's okay, he's fine. It's so disingenuous. And I think that's another main reason why so many people are leaving the church too, because they see it as the hypocrisy it is. It's hard to hide that amount of hypocrisy and have a normal sane person look at that and go, yeah, this all checks out, I'm going to keep following this doctrine and teaching. No.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, I don't know. Like, it gets to a point where I'm just like, you know what? If I'm wrong and God is a thing, right? My idea of God, this is just you know, my opinion. Like, I say, you know, I throw my horns up and I say hail Satan all the time, right? In my opinion, I think God loves me more than he loves most Christians, because I actually
Amen
try to
to
live my
that.
life. I actually try to live my life like a good person, you know.
Yeah.
um, you know, I'm not trying to force my shit down other people's throats, and I try to be a good person while I'm here and do the right thing because it's the right thing, not because I believe that there's some heavenly benefit after the fact. You know, I think if
Yeah.
I'm wrong and I die and I go up to the pearly gates, you'd be like, look, you fucked up on who you were, you know, worshiping, but you're not an asshole, so come on, you know, like,
Yeah.
like, like, you know,
Exactly.
I'm pretty sure that that's what's going to happen. Like, I don't think it's because I think that was another thing for me, like growing up, was that whole idea is like, you know, thou shalt not worship any other graven image other than thy Lord God, for thy Lord God is a jealous God. And I'm like, that's a human concept, man. Like, if
Oh
God is
yeah.
supposed to be all powerful, all knowing, you know, like benevolent and all of this shit, why does he suffer from jealousy?
Yep.
You know, like that's a huge, like, and like that is
It's a
such
human
like,
error.
right. And then that is such like a wife beater concept, isn't it? Like, you know, like, oh,
Yeah.
if you like, you know, you even talk to somebody else, you know, like, I'm going to send you to hell. Like, I'm going to beat the shit out of you. It's
Yep.
like, really? Like, I don't want my God to be that way.
Well, and the presence of jealousy towards other gods, even in the Bible, implies that there are other gods to be jealous of. If you were the only one true God, you wouldn't need to be jealous of any other gods. It would just be, you know, all these guys are all imitations. You're worshiping a nothing. You're worshiping a satanic image, right? That would be the only opinion. You wouldn't need to be jealous of another thing unless you felt like there was an actual threat to you, to be worthy of that jealousy. And so that alone is another kind of emphasis that Christians don't understand. The ancient Israelites were not monotheistic. I off the top of my head, I don't remember what the word is. Mono something. It basically means they worshipped one god, but they knew other gods existed. And so it's different from monotheism, which is only a belief in one god. They knew other gods in this Canaanite pantheon existed. They had different tribes that worshipped all these different gods. El is the progenitor god. He was the creator god. And then you have the Bene Elohim, which are the divine council. The divine council is a series of pantheonic gods, which include Baal, which include Moloch, which include Yahweh. And all of these gods were worshipped by different tribes throughout the region. And they all hated each other. They all killed each other. Yahweh was jealous because other Israelites were worshiping other gods. And, they couldn't agree with their belief systems. They couldn't agree with what was right. And that's why they went to war so much as well. And that's why Yahweh told them all to go to war, because he wanted to spiritually purify the Israelites. And so, that's why there's so much genocide in the Old Testament that is not only looked positively upon by Yahweh, but he is directly ordering the Israelites to go to war with these other tribes, kill the men, kill the women. Any woman who is not known a man, you can take her for yourself, but kill every other child. I mean, these are direct lines from the Old Testament. And the interesting thing too, doing my research, was we don't even know specifically if these wars actually even took place. The most general consensus is that these are extremely hyperbolic events to have happened. A lot of scholars also believe that none of this could even have happened at all. There may not have been all of these great wars throughout, Israel and stuff like that. And especially like the concepts of Exodus. I mean, the Israelites used hyperbole and legend so much. The concept of the great Exodus, where the Jews were persecuted in Israel and used as slaves, none of that is true. The ancient Egyptians heavily documented their history, and there is not a single moment of documented history throughout all of Egypt that they ever had Hebrew or Israelite slaves. Never a one. And the fact that, Israel is only, so it's so close to actual Egypt. The fact that they like got lost for 40 years trying to get back to the homeland and stuff like that. There's no evidence that almost any of this happened, but it's used as doctrine. It's used as literal biblical truth. And even if you think about the great flood myths and stuff like that, there are great flood myths in Babylonian texts. There's great flood myths in Mesopotamian texts. You know what I mean? There's so many other cultures that have these big flood events that maybe local floods happened, but there's obviously no global flood proof at all. And so they take these concepts and they take these stories and legends and they blend it with if you take these legends through the Greek and Roman lens, and then you start including philosophy from these other religions, you can start to see where all of this ancient legend blends into what is now Christianity, because it's so dramatically different from ancient Hebrew thought. Especially the concept of like what the modern depiction of hell even is, right? The person who dramatically influenced what the modern version of hell is was Dante Alighieri. His depiction of Inferno in the Divine Comedy is what most people took as this is, what the true look of hell is, right? You have the nine layers of punishment and stuff like that. The concept of, unbaptized children going to hell. The concept of, if you commit suicide, you automatically go to hell. This was not in anyone's early thought. This is all modern day story, poetry, epic tales that were then evolved and absorbed into Christian thought later.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is that whole concept. I mean, all of it. If you think about points of control, like if you think about a cult, right? So, and you break that down, if you don't baptize your kid, and perpetuate enrollment into the occult, into the cult, you know, you're going to go to hell. So there's fear mongering there to force the perpetuation of enrollment into the cult. If you kill yourself, right? Because you were talking about, oh, if you die, you believe in God and you die and you go to heaven. Well, we don't want our people, you know, fucking up in life and then killing themselves and then, you know, enrollment getting cut off at like 25 because they're having a rough time. So, you know, let's make them afraid to kill themselves. So, you know, I mean, I don't think anyone should kill themselves, by the way, but, you know, I'm just speaking logic here, right? So you're not going to go to heaven if you kill yourself. You're going to go to hell. It's all perpetuation of the fear mongering, you know. And I was looking at the comments here. So the one where we talked about kind of like the Old Testament and the New Testament and how it's being two different types of gods being spoken about. There was a comment here, the one that interlaces the church. It says it's the same God. God never changed either. That perception comes from ignorance of context and lack of actually reading the scriptures. This is why the church is so important. And like, if you actually read the scriptures, I'm sorry, like it is a completely different God. You have a God of wrath and then a God of compassion and forgiveness. You know, it's two totally different energies. It's different vibes. And when you're talking about kind of like the Old Testament, one of my favorite ones to quote to people, you know, of the loving God that they constantly talk about, I'm not going to try to pronounce the name of it. I know it starts with a D, but I'm not going to try to pronounce it. But the scripture goes, happy shall he be who taketh and dasheth thy little ones against the stones. And I'm just sitting there thinking, like, I mean, your God is perpetuating child murder. Like
how do you rationalize it?
Right? I'm like, and those are never the scriptures they talk about, right? They never bring those ones to you, right? They always talk about like, you know, the ones are, and like you said, I think in a video that you had made for TikTok, you said, I mean, Jesus never actually said anything in the Bible, right? I think at one point they thought maybe the Dead Sea Scrolls were the actual writings of Jesus, but I think that was debunked. You know, there is no book in the Bible of Jesus. It's all third, fourth, and fifth, you know, party accounts of everything. A few hundred years after the fact.
Yep.
You know, and it's like,
you have, oh no, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, like, I mean, I can barely remember what I ate for fucking breakfast. I mean, you're going to sit there and say that a book written 200-300 years after certain events happen is going to be accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. What's interesting too is, you know, people think that the source texts are the actual, and now I'm blanking on what the actual word is. The books attributed to Jesus by his disciples. What are those called? Oh my goodness. Anyways, a lot of people believe that those are like the first of the text, right? Like the stories of Jesus come first and then everything else is kind of afterward. But the letters that Paul wrote are what come first. Paul, who originally he was a Jewish preacher who was Roman speaking, he was Greek speaking, he lived in Rome, and he heavily influenced later Christian thought because he basically took the lore that was going on about Jesus and Christians at the time. He is known to have persecuted Christians. Whether or not he actually did any types of persecutions or anything like that, again, there's so little tangible evidence of a lot of this biblical history ever even happening that we don't know if these claims that are being made can be taken at face value. In fact, I've even seen arguments that the person who we call Paul, who originally was Saul, may not have even been a real person. Or he was a real person, but the letters attributed to him, there were 13 letters that he wrote, maybe only 7 actual letters are ones he wrote, and the rest are attributed to Paul. And so the letters of Paul actually come before the actual books attributed to the teachings of Jesus. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, those came after all of that even. So you have Paul's influence of Christianity coming before the Gospels. Goodness gracious, why couldn't I have thought of that word? The Gospels came after the influence of Paul, probably 50 years later or so. And it's because so much of, that tradition was an oral tradition. They didn't write a lot of stuff down. And in fact, a lot of the people who were followers of Jesus were illiterate. So many of those people, you think about all of these fishermen who were disciples of Jesus, right? You think that they were actually writing stuff down? No, they most of them were illiterate. They couldn't read, they couldn't write. It was an oral tradition for a reason, and it was only higher, scholars that were able to read and write. And it was passed down orally for years and years and years through all of these different Christian cults. It was influenced by Mithraism. It was influenced by, Greek mythology. And then eventually people came up with, oh, let's start to codify these specific ideas. And that's how, but that's also why we have, 200 different versions of the Bible too, they couldn't even agree on what was true, and even the Gospels themselves, they contradict themselves about the life of Jesus. So
So I'm doing like some active research while we're talking, right?
oh,
So
perfect.
because I really wanted to remember the name of the one scholar that actually that was alive during the time of Jesus and supposedly wrote about Jesus, but was proven to be falsified, and that would be Flavius
Josephus.
And so the thing with that is, and that's one that a lot of people still to this day quote as being proof, and it was proven to be false because the language is blatantly Christian, not Jewish, right? Because of what was used. It was so modern scholarships or modern scholars agree that it was taken later, right, in Christian interpolation, and included to be kind of proof. But the amount of people that existed, right, like if you look at Philo of Alexandria, Hustus of Tiberias, Seneca the Younger, Pliny the Elder, Lucius Galileo, and the list goes on. Not a single one of them, every single one of them lived during the time of Jesus, supposedly. Not a single one of them wrote anything about Jesus.
Yep.
And you would think if there's somebody healing the sick, walking on water, feeding the hungry, doing all of these things, that somebody
Raising the dead.
Raising the fucking dead, that one of these motherfuckers would be like, hey, holy shit, we got, this dude out here, doing some crazy shit. Not a single one of them. Not a single one. Just that one guy during that time period mentioned him. And then it was completely, and it wasn't even like Jesus who was mentioned. He mentioned like Christ. And that means the anointed one. That doesn't mean,
that's just a title.
That's just the title. It's not a name, but it was later taken and manipulated in. And so this is the thing. It's like when people talk about Jesus, I'm like, the chances are he didn't even exist.
Yeah. Well, and another theory that I had heard as well, which I think is equally as plausible as any other theory, honestly. During that time when the Romans were, trying to be the imperial Romans were, invading lands and stuff like that. The ancient, the early, the Second Temple Jews were, feeling threatened by Roman influence and stuff like that. There could have been a number of radical progressive Jewish thinkers at the time, right? One of the interesting theory that I had heard is that Jesus is an amalgamation of probably several different progressive Jewish thinkers that were causing these like revivalistic concepts in Jewish history. And there were people talking about more concepts of the afterlife. They were talking about the kingdom of God, and one of the main reasons why the Romans didn't necessarily care what people believed. They conquered so many lands. They let a lot of pagan practice continue. They weren't interested in influencing local religions necessarily. They just wanted to conquer lands. They wanted to make sure you paid your taxes, but you could believe whatever you want. Don't start rebellion. Don't try to overthrow us, but other than that, do whatever you want. And it was, you know, specific Jewish leaders that were pushing concepts of revival and, you know, a new kingdom. We should follow this kingdom of God. We need to, you know, go against the Roman rebellion, or you know, we need to rebel against the Romans. That is where they started to like possibly mold these different people into like one messianic figure. And I was like, oh, that's, you know, that's an interesting, you know, and again, you know, it's all equally plausible just because we have so little proof of anything actually happening. Any good, you know, concept could be almost as justifiable as another.
Yeah, no, I mean 100%. You know, it's just I feel like one of the things that I said, and I know that this has been turned into like a meme online, but it's so true. And I've said this before this thing came out, but unfortunately, because that became popular and I didn't, you know, I'm the secondary, right? But why do we believe? Like, why do we believe in something? Because we don't know. You can only believe in what you don't know. Because if you know something, you don't need belief. It just exists, right? So the reason we need faith is because we're not 100% certain. We're not 100% sure. It's something that connects with us at a deep level. It's something that we believe in, but we don't know. We can't claim to know. We can know for ourselves, but we can't objectively know, right? So we believe.
Yeah.
And the problem that we run across, and this goes back to what we said before, it's like, honestly, like, I really would love to be able to just produce content about the occult, educate people, and bring good people together and be left the fuck alone while doing it without having mass amounts of stupid people jump into a comment section telling us that we're going to go to hell and then get pissed off when we prove them wrong, and like have the argument completely degraded into just insults. Because what that shows me and what that proves to me is that these people in the comment section are the same type of people that, if given the right motivations, would cause physical bodily harm to an occultist because they believe that they're doing what is right in the name of their God, in the name of their faith. And that, again, I reiterate this point, and I keep saying it, it is a terrifying fucking concept to me.
Yeah.
You know, it really is. You know, and, you know, people, like, there was a couple of days ago, I did an episode of Satan and Coffee, and like I came down on Islam, I came down on Judaism, I came down on all three of them. And then I had people in the comments like coming at me because of the Islam part of it. And I'm like, look, I have said a million times, I have no respect for the Abrahamic triptych. And that triptych is Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. And if I were to, like, if I was coming down on Christianity, nobody would say shit, right? Nobody said, oh yeah, fuck Christianity, fuck the Christians, shit like that. And it's like, yeah, fuck the Christians. But I feel the same way about the other two. Like, you know, I'm not discriminating here. Like, you know, like I'm an equal opportunity hater, right? You know, like, and I mean, it kind of stopped it from snowballing, right? Because it's kind of like, I think that's kind of logical, right? It's like, if I was saying this about Christianity, it's like, oh yeah, like everybody's behind me. I say about Islam, I'm like, oh, you can't do that. It's like, yes, I can. Like, I'm allowed to have a fucking opinion, right? You know? And here's the thing. I lived in Turkey for 2 years. I lived in Istanbul, Turkey for 2 years. I was surrounded by Muslims. Like, you know, it's a Muslim country.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to say something that I know that most modern Muslims don't want to hear. Out of the hundreds of people that I spoke to in the 2 years that I lived there, there was one person that I met that actually believed in Sharia. Everyone else was completely against it. That's in a Muslim country. And like when I see people, you know, in like New York and stuff like that, like going, oh yeah, it's going to be under Sharia. It's like, you don't know what you're asking. Like it's like saying like, oh yeah, we want Christian nationalism. I know you don't want that. So, like, can we at least be consistent? You know what I mean? And I'm sorry, that came up because somebody in the chat decided to say Islam is the truth. So I decided to throw that out there. But I'm going to tell you this right now. Like, I mean, Turkish people, they're amazing people. Turkish food, holy shit, man. Like,
Oh, I could only imagine.
Oh, I would kill to go back
Sounds
to eat
phenomenal.
some Turkish food. Oh yeah, it's great, man. Lahmacun. Oh, it's like a pita bread with like some meat and some type of special sauce on it. Like I don't, I mean, I know that's understating it, but it's like, and it's all freshly made right in front of you. Oh God, it's fucking amazing. And the people, like, it was the first time I had breakfast on the floor, right? So they save their dining tables are for like dinner. That's it. Like they eat dinner at the dining table, but like breakfast and lunch, like they roll out like kind of like a picnic mat, and like they put all the food on the floor, and you kind of sit down on these little cushions, and
that's
you
awesome.
you start picking at all this stuff and put it together. You get like this special pita bread that they make, and you put your eggs in it and like stuff like that, and it's so good.
How
it's
cool.
So good. Yeah. The only thing I missed was bacon, because obviously in Turkey you can't get bacon. But
yep, that makes sense.
That's the only thing I missed. But there's so much good food, like the lamb and the beef. My favorite food was kofta, which basically just means meatball. It translates to meatball, but it's like a flat kind of meatball. And like the
I've tried to make my own version of that. It's not the same. No, I couldn't do it justice.
Oh my God, it's so good. Like I was obsessed. Like my boss, the last boss that I had, he was the one person that actually believed in Sharia, by the way. He was a good person. I'm not going to say he was a bad person, but there were differences. There was clash there, right? He would invite me to his home, and he owned a factory with his two brothers. And so it would be him and his two brothers, and we would have like this barbecue kind of thing. His wife and daughters would stay in the house. Like that was a traditional thing. They were not allowed out. They were not allowed to have contact with me, right? Because I wasn't family. And so that man made the best fucking kofta. Like I was so obsessed. What actually caused my leaving was it came to light that apparently he wasn't able to have a son. And what he wanted to do with me, because at the time, you guys gotta figure, I wasn't even 20 at the time. Like I was maybe 19. He wanted to adopt me and like have me, and that came to light because when I was his teacher in a school that I was working for on the European side of Taksim, or like Istanbul, in Taksim. And he said, I will pay you double what they're paying you now just to come to my factory and teach me by myself. You stay at my office all day. I will pay you double what they're paying you now, and I will give you a place to live. And he owned a building on the Asian side of Turkey, like I think it was like a 40-floor apartment building. Brand new building. Nobody was living in it. He said, which one do you want? And I chose one. I had a driver that came and picked me up and brought me to work and stuff like that. Like, but when we furnished the place, there was one thing, because we went to like this something called the Grand Bazaar, which is used like you can buy furniture, stuff like that. So I chose everything I wanted. And when I got back from work one day, everything was already set up. Everything was already put together, put where I said I wanted it. But there was one thing in the house that I never asked for. There was a podium in the middle of the living room with a gold inlay Quran in the middle of the living room. And I'm talking like, when you look at this book, like it was actual gold. Like this isn't like a cheap book. Like this is like, like you have to be into this shit to spend money on this.
Yeah.
And so I started asking people at work, I'm like, why would he do that? And he's like, you don't get it, do you? I'm like, no. He's like, he doesn't have a son. He can't have a son. And he wants one to carry his name. I'm like, well, but that's not me. It's like, well, that's his idea.
Interesting.
So I'm like,
which also means he wants to make sure that you convert to Islam to carry it on.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And 2 months later, I was out. That's when I came to Mexico.
Interesting. That's wild.
Mm-hmm. He was pissed when I left. Oh, he was pissed. And I felt bad because like I said, he wasn't a bad guy. There were points that we disagreed with, or that I disagreed
Yeah.
with. I never actually had an open disagreement with him, but there were things that I disagreed with. But I still saw him as a good person, you know?
Yeah.
But the whole converting me and me becoming his kid kind of thing scared the shit out of me. And I just, yeah, I 2 months later, I saved my money, bought a plane ticket, and I came here to Mexico. Didn't look back.
Wow. That is wild.
So, like, I mean, when it comes to the faith, and see, what bothers me is when it comes to Christianity, when it comes to Judaism, when it comes to Islam, people say you can't hate the faith, but you can judge the people, the individuals that misconstrued it. And I think that that's completely wrong. I think there are people that believe in these things that look at it and they remove the things that cause negativity, that cause hatred, that cause violence. And they believe in the fundamental idea of live and let live and peace and love and harmony in their faith, in what they believe in, even though the faith itself can be very violent and aggressive. Because I've read the Quran, guys. Like, I'm telling you, the Quran is not, it's not a peace and loving book. It's really not. And the same can be said for the Bible. Like, especially if you go through the Old Testament, it's not a peace and loving book. I mean, so the people that, like Mark 5, the Eastern Orthodox Christian that we have on here, that he's a member of the community, talked about him a million times. You know, people like him, like, I respect him. And I can respect the individual in how they believe in their faith. But most of these people would not be up our ass telling us that we're going to go to hell, telling us that we're horrible people, the assumption that we're miserable, right? That we don't have anything of meaning in our lives. And it's like, that was another one of the comments that like threw me off. It's like, well, wait a minute, we're both family men. We both have wives and children, and we're happy in what we're doing. What is this that we're miserable? Like, come and find Jesus if you want true happiness. It's like, we're happy, man. Trust me. You know, like, we're not hateful. We're not spewing hate. Like, you as in the individual believer, I can respect you if you talk to me. But if you're going to come at me, tell me I'm going to go to hell, tell me I'm a horrible person, you know. I remember there was one creator on here before she decided to say she was a witch, that said that me and people like me were the reason that rape, murder, and war existed. And I'm just like,
what?
I'm like, so excuse me when I sit and I say, no, I hate the faith. I hate the church. I hate the institution. I hate the organization. I hate the books. I abhor it with an unholy passion. But that's not every single believer, is it?
Yep.
I can respect the individual. I don't have to respect the faith. That's my take on it. I mean, what do you think?
I think the main issue arises when we start to see morality as vertical. Vertical morality is one of the biggest issues that I have with any religious belief, right? Morality comes from above, and it works vertically, and that means that, you know, you have a hierarchy of what is moral and what is not. And if you keep in alignment with what this vertical hierarchy of morality is, then anything is justifiable in this pillar, right? And anything outside of it is bad. And that is one of the main reasons why many believers, and I'm not going to say Christians, I'm going to say believers, as in anyone who believes in vertical morality, they cannot rationalize non-believers as being moral because it doesn't fit inside of the vertical morality framework. They see atheists, they see non-believers, they see people of other types of, you know, less fundamentalist religions, and they say, well, what is stopping you from murdering someone? What is stopping you from raping someone? What is stopping you from stealing, right? And because they see morality as coming from a divine source, and when you're not a part of that divine source, then you're just amoral. And so, the atheistic answer to that is, because I murder just as much as I want to murder, I rape just as much as I want to rape, which is none. I don't want to do that. It doesn't mean that I have to follow a god in order to find where my morality comes from. I don't want to do any of those things, which is why I do it just as much as I want to do it. In fact, a counter argument to that is, if belief in vertical morality is the only thing stopping you from doing horrible things, then how does that make you a moral person? Because if you really wanted to do all of these things, and the only reason you don't do it is because you have a divine source telling you that it's immoral to do so, how does that make you a better person than a non-believer who says, I don't want to do any of those things, and I also don't believe? So horizontal morality is the only way that we should live our lives, because vertical morality influencing politics as well is extremely dangerous. You can't do XYZ because we're going to create laws and pass policies based on religious belief systems. That is a dangerous path to go down. And I think so many Christian nationalists, they're so afraid of Sharia law because they see the fundamentalist concept of Islam as, oh well, if these fundamentalist Islamic beliefs start influencing their politics, um and it becomes law, right? Well, now we could just kill whoever we want because they believe XYZ. How is that any different from what Christian nationalists are trying to do anyways, right? Oh, we want to stone people that are gay. We want to make, I've seen people go so far as to say, yeah, we should have executions for people who are of the LGBTQ community. And it's like, okay, tell me how that's different from like the extremist belief in Sharia law. There's no difference. You're using biblical vertical morality to try to pass laws and judgments that are only for you to believe. It's not for everyone to believe. So
Yeah, no, man,
it's
I love
dangerous.
that. I love that outline, man. And I love how you put it. And it makes it, describing it that way makes it digestible, because one of the problems with the way that I present things, and I'm aware of this, right? I'm self-aware of my own flaws here. I am a blunt instrument. Right? I am not tactical in any way, shape, or form. I am a very blunt instrument, and my heart is always in a good place. But when my mouth opens, it's blunt, it's direct, it's unforgiving, and it can cause issues, it can cause problems, and I'm aware of that. So I do very much appreciate the way that you outline that, because that is a significantly more it says the exact same thing that I'm saying, but in a very, it's a more digestible way, that doesn't make people feel like they're being attacked.
Well, I mean, sometimes, people need the hammer, and sometimes people need the scalpel. There's two ways to go to approach any situation. I I was one of those types of Christians where if I felt threatened by somebody, or made to be belittled by someone else who was a non-believer, you immediately have a defensive mechanism against it. And maybe that's why I feel like I can speak to those things in a little bit more of a razor instead of a hammer, because I know what triggered me when I was having conversations with non-believers. Because my intention as a Christian was to preach, what I thought was true and to save you. You know what I mean? And so the way I was going to come across that idea also wasn't like, I'm going to insult this person's belief because that's going to make them think kindly of what I'm trying to say. it has the opposite reaction. And so for me, trying to be someone who wanted to be a good Christian too, I wasn't one of those Bible thumpers who would go around saying you're gonna burn in hell. You know what I mean? Like, even when I was a believer, I tried to approach it from a very pragmatic way, from a very a very kind, gentle. I tried to embody the teachings of Christ. I tried to embody the philosophy of Christ. And I think one of the main things that really had me kind of step away is I didn't see any of that in other Christians. And I couldn't see this gentle, loving approach in Christianity anymore. And so many, I mean, even, my own family and stuff like that, it's hard to have any type of theological conversation with them, because it ends up just becoming fire and brimstone. It ends up becoming, and I'm just like, no, I don't want to have those arguments anymore. I don't feel like I need to impose my belief on anyone. I mean, you even said it earlier. We would love to just be left alone. We would love to just do what we want to do, have our thoughts and opinions, and just, not have people jump in our comments, um, you know, criticizing us at every turn. And it's always the religious people that criticize.
Exactly. I mean, it's one of the things. It's like this content isn't made for Christians, right? I mean, if
Yeah.
you're interested and you want to watch it, fine, go for it. But I'm not trying to start an argument with a Christian. Like that's not my mind is made up. I'm almost 40 years old. Like I've been doing this 20 plus years. My mind is made up of like what I believe in. If I'm wrong,
Yeah.
I'm wrong. That's fine. But you know, this is where I want to be. I'm happy in this place. And again, going back to that, things like that, I think that's one of the things that also bothers me a lot is this obsessive idea that because, I have a pentagram on the amount of times that people mention this hat in the comment section, like was
Yeah.
boggles my mind. It's like, oh, I
They
see
were
the symbol
so
on his
mad
hat.
about your hat.
Right. It's like, what the
Yeah.
fuck, man?
Look
It's a
at the symbol
hat,
on his hat. We know where he's going.
right? Like, it's like, really? Um, it's just, it's not. I'm not trying to pick a fight with you guys. Like, sometimes the topic comes up because, unfortunately, you were a Christian for 30 years. I had to deal with it. You know what I mean? Like, I had to deal with Christians coming at me as a kid, and like Christian morality and all of that stuff. And it's like it's a topic of discussion because it's something that we've dealt with. Um,
Yeah.
and so it's not done in the sense that we want to be combative with Christians or Christianity per se. My hate for the faith and the structure and all of that set aside. That doesn't mean I want to go to war with it. You know, that's just my personal feeling is like it goes against my values. Like the entire structure of the system goes against my values and my principles. Like in the
Yeah.
sense of like covering up child abuse, the whole, like domestic violence being okay. Cause I mean, you read the Bible, I mean, it's in there, like all of these things, it doesn't align with me. So that's where my hatred for that comes from. But that doesn't mean I hate you as a person. And I'm not trying to go to war with you, but sometimes these conversations come up and we need to have this conversation. This live exists because of you guys. You guys came at us. This is a reaction. Like where we're defending ourselves here. We're not trying to start a war.
Yeah.
What we want is we want to be left the hell alone. We want to be able to teach the things that we want to teach, and things just like you guys want to teach to your people what's so important to you, to your people. We want to do the same thing, and you're not letting us. Like you keep causing this unnecessary friction, and where's it gotten you? Nowhere.
No, I think the thing that when they come into the comments too, one of the things that uh, and we every person on one side or another of an argument assumes they are correct. The problem is when you go through actual biblical history and you do the actual research, you're armed with so much more information that the modern born again Christian just hasn't, they haven't done the work. Modern Christianity isn't trying to emphasize biblical history. It's trying to emphasize these are our hot button talking points. You don't need to read the whole Bible. You don't need to understand how you went from this belief to this belief to this belief to this belief. It's just, this is what modern day Christianity is. As long as you know, check these boxes, you can consider yourself a Christian, and that's all you have to worry about. It simplifies thousands and thousands and thousands of years of changing beliefs, syncretic philosophies, and entire global transformations of many different ancient beliefs into just one simple idea. And you can't just take that for face value. If you want to call yourself a Christian, you want to take that for face value, you are ignorant to your own history. You are ignorant to where your beliefs come from. And I know so many born again Christians who get this like visceral feeling in their body because they feel like, I am empty, I'm broken, I need something to fill me. I just became a born again Christian. This is great. I have this fire for Jesus, and you know, um and it's an actual a euphoric experience, and it's great. I'm glad you have these like euphoric experiences. It's science at the end of the day. You know, it's not actually this Holy Spirit filling you up as much as they say that it is this, you know, rapture of the Holy Spirit. This is a physiological response to you feeling like a part of yourself is finally being completed by this outside force. And but that is where like the thinking stops. They don't do enough research into their history. They don't do enough research into how, like, what the development of the Bible is and where their belief comes from. As long as they feel good, as long as they feel like they're correct, and if they have that righteous passion to want to go into people's comments and say, "Oh, I can't wait for you to you know, experience hell." You know what I mean? They have a tangible reaction to the concept of wanting to prove that other people are going to go to hell. You know what I mean? They want it to happen so badly that they go into people's comments and they go, "Oh, you know, you're going to find out. You're going to just wait. I can't wait for you to find out what hell is like." And I'm just like, "Man, like you it's so ignorant. It's so ignorant."
It is. I mean, I think one other thing that I thought was funny was there's a couple of comments between the two videos because I'm looking at it right now. Like one of them has 51 comments, the other one has 56. So it's between two different reels. And what I thought was funny was like, you know, a couple of people had mentioned, or I think maybe it was the same person that mentioned, it's like, oh, when the end times happens, like, bro, like the end times have been happening since like I don't even know when, since before I was even born. Like,
Yep.
you know, everybody, they've been talking about the end times and the second coming of Christ and stuff like that. And it's like, do you really want to spend the entirety of your life preparing for something that's probably not going to come, and look back at your life, look at the people that you love, and say, I wasted so much time preparing for this bullshit instead of enjoying the people that I had right in front of me?
Yep.
I mean, that's one of the things. I mean, I don't know how old you are, Blake, but like I'm almost 40. Like I know we talked about, I don't remember how old you said you were, but I'm almost 40. I'll be 40 in June. And man, dude, that's a big thing
Congrats.
for me. That's a big thing for me right now, is like,
Yeah.
I want to make sure that, like, you know, the people that I love know that I love them through consistency and action, and not wasting time with stupid shit. You know, and it's just like, I look, it's like, and they speak, these people will sit there, like, I'm going to reiterate this point again. It's the third time I'm mentioning this because it really bothers me, this, that we're not happy because we're occultists. You know,
Yeah.
we're miserable, you know, and so we don't know love. And it's like, who are you to say that to me? Like, who are you to say, because I don't accept your God, your Jesus into my life, like I don't know love? It's
Yeah.
such a horrible outlook to have. So bad.
Yeah. But
So
they want it though. they want other people to suffer because they don't have their same beliefs. And that's the wildest part of this whole concept to me, is that they relish in the fact that they think that people are going to suffer and perish for eternity, and that they have this little, this little treat that they're dangling above everyone's head because they think they have this, righteous judgment to do so. And I'm just, I can't get behind that. I feel like occultism has fulfilled me more than any of my time in Christianity. I mean, yeah, I feel like I did some good things as a Christian. I feel like, I had some great experiences, and even going to like church camps and stuff like that. It was a lot of fun. I made a lot of friends. I had a lot of, positive beliefs, and there were positive things that happened in my life. And it's like I don't take anything away from that. But in terms of where you're at mentally with where your belief is, constantly having that end times apocalyptic mindset is long term damaging. It is going to give you long term trauma. It gives you immediate trauma when you're constantly thinking about hell. It gives you long term trauma when you're thinking that at any given point, the world as I know it is going to end, and we're going to, have all of this, these tribulations and stuff like that. That is a breeding ground of just trauma and long-term unhappiness, because you can't ever just be content in the moment. You always have to think about, this life doesn't matter. The afterlife is the only thing that matters. And that is why the only thing a Christian can really say is, you're going to find out. You're going to figure it out soon, right? Because they can't give you anything to say about the current, about your current happiness. It's always like, you're sinful, you're unhappy, your life is meaningless, and you're going to find out when you die that you're going to burn forever. And they love that, though. It's a passion for them.
And I actually have one specific question for you that came up in the YouTube comments.
Oh,
I
sure.
remember what it is, but I'm going to look for it because like I want to get it verbatim, right? So there's a woman that had right here, yeah. So Kimberly Green asked, I would love to hear how he had religious trauma. Examples would be great about how religion gave him trauma.
Great question. So like I said, I feel like a majority of my time as a Christian was majorly positive. You know what I mean? Like I said, I had friends, I had like support structure. I was able to go to church camps. I was able to enjoy normal things as a kid. Um, the trauma really came from, I remember early when I was in my youth, uh, when the concept of hell was brought up. There was especially in church camp, the first night of church camp is very much a fire and brimstone night. The first thing they want to do is they want to tell you that there is this horrible place that you're going to go to. You're going to burn forever. And they are they heavily emphasize this concept of this eternal damnation in the afterlife. And they talk to you as a youth because that is when you're going through all of this physical and psychological change in your life, right? Your hormones are going crazy, you're thinking about girls, you're thinking about all these things. And so they want to get you with the purity culture, they want to get you with this eternal damnation, because they need to make sure you know that the way you feel naturally as a young man is sinful right out the gate. You're going through all of this change. And even though it's natural in a naturalistic sense, to God's eyes, this is sinful. This is evil. You need to feel shame because you feel certain ways. I remember I wasn't allowed to take certain biology courses in high school because it talked about like sex education and stuff like that. Because any conversation surrounding sex safety is considered sinful. You know what I mean? You're not allowed to talk about it. You're not allowed to understand what these concepts even are, because it's all even the concept of like extramarital sexual relations is horrible. And so I remember I was handicapped, in my thinking of like what sex even was for most of my even in high school and stuff like that. Like I still didn't have a full grasp of like what all this meant, because I was never taught it in any capacity. And so like I knew, the concept, but it was like, understanding basic biology and stuff like that, couldn't do it. And in fact, even thinking about it was a sin, right? And when you're going through all these hormones and you don't know how to rationalize what is actually physiologically going on in your body, you only see it as, oh, I'm just being a sinful person right now. You don't think of it as, oh, I'm just going through normal hormonal changes. You just see it as Satan is constantly tempting me. I am constantly combating this evil inside of me that I need to try to worry about, because if I act on any impulse, if I think impure thoughts, I could go to hell, right? Jesus is looking at my every thought. I constantly have someone judging me internally. And I was terrified too of the concept of the rapture. The rapture was a terrifying concept for me because I was always wondering if I did something sinful and I didn't pray that I was forgiven, if the rapture came, would God not take me? You know what I mean? Would I be left behind where the rest of my family would leave? And reading the Left Behind book series as a youth and watching some of the movies probably didn't help either, because the whole concept of those books and movies was a character left behind after the rapture who was going through 7 years of tribulation and the horrible things that take place, and the concept of the mark of the beast and stuff like that. And so those books and movies heavily influenced my fear of the rapture, because I didn't want to get left behind. I didn't want my family to leave me. And as a kid, I was like, who am I going to go to? I'm going to be stuck here forever. And so, the concept of like the mark of the beast and the Antichrist is coming. You know what I mean? Oh, is the Antichrist on the planet with us right now? You know what I mean? Do I have to worry about demons starting to attack? You know what I mean? You're constantly in this apocalyptic mindset that it pollutes positive thinking, it pollutes long-term thinking, because you're constantly under the assumption that all of this is going to end soon. You know what I mean? None of it is going to matter. So why should I worry about a future? Why should I worry about, doing anything else other than being this pure celibate person, because I need to constantly worry about if I'm going to win a spot in heaven or if I'm going to burn forever, because any amount of
Hmm.
sin could put you right into hell.
Yeah.
And it's not just a night in jail. This is going to be for eternity, forever and ever and ever. And it's just the whole concept. It's so toxic, and it's a
Terrifying shit.
pollution of your mind. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
terrifying.
But if also though, like I mean, with something that you said there though, it's so psychologically advanced. It's psychological warfare essentially. Like it's so psychologically advanced because it's like I just wrote it down so I didn't forget it. It's controlling thought by knowing what you will think and influencing how you will feel about that thought.
Yeah,
I mean, that's psychological warfare. It's like I can't
yeah,
control your thoughts, but I can have an understanding based on age and, stuff like that of what you will be thinking. So if I can influence how you're going to feel about certain thoughts, I can then control your actions because I can make you at least influence how you're going to feel about something.
yeah,
Dude, that is
yeah,
pervertedly advanced psychological warfare.
yeah.
Like, and the fact that people think that that's okay. right?
Well, and it happens to the youth too. Like it's not even just psychological warfare against adults. You know what I mean? It's psychological warfare used on children and adolescents and people that are going through some of the most dramatic changes in their life. The people who are absorbing the most amount of information. Um all of that heavily influences the type of thinking you do in general, right? uh um when but it has to happen, it has to be that way, you know what I mean? I had a conversation with someone about churches and Christians. They need to promote these ideas when you're a kid, because if you let someone live their life without any of these concepts, they're less likely to just start accepting them on blind faith, you know what I mean? And so the concept of being a Christian isn't, oh, let's let them decide what they want to do. It's no, we got to make sure that as early as possible they can start to eat these ideas up. I'm seeing that currently with my own family. They know I'm the gentleman occultist, you know what I mean, and they don't necessarily agree with it. And even though we don't really have any theological discussions about anything anymore like we used to, when my children get babysat, they will start asking me questions about who is Jesus, what does this mean, and I'm like, where did you hear that? Oh, well, you know. uh so
Hey,
for me, I'm just like,
I would go off.
and
Somebody
I'm
starts,
trying not to, man. I'm trying not to. I'm trying to be nice, but I'm also like, do not talk to my kids about any of this stuff.
yeah, no, like, I mean, my son, so my oldest is from a previous relationship, and he, through that family, has a lot of concepts about Jesus and stuff like that. And I'm not going to shut him down, because like the thing is he's already now at 11 years old to the point where he believes in Jesus. He believes, in, God and stuff like that. And I don't tear it apart. Right.
Yeah.
Like if that's what he wants to believe in, then I'm going to support that belief, even if I don't agree with it. And it's painful, because my idea is like, it's the whole reason I created Leora and Pip, was because I want to be able to bring to kids, that those values, those same values, but without the dogma, without the fear. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I get my kid, my 11-year-old sending me Jesus reels at 3 o'clock in the morning, you know what I mean, to save my soul. And I'm like,
Hmm.
first and foremost, why are you awake at 3 o'clock in the morning? And second of all, I'm okay. Don't worry. Like,
Because that fear doesn't sleep, man. That
it
that
doesn't,
fear never goes away. You stay
and
up until the wee hours of the morning thinking about it.
yeah, and I'm almost certain that that's probably a reason why he's awake at 3 o'clock in the morning sending me that stuff, is because he's afraid Dad's going to go to hell.
Yep.
Because what I do isn't a secret. I
Yep.
don't, because I don't want either of my boys to be afraid of it. They don't need to know about it. They don't need to know the details. They don't need to know who Belial is, who King Payman is. They don't need to know that stuff. But I
Sure.
still don't. I still don't hide what I do. If they get to a certain age and they have questions, then yeah, I'll answer those questions. But it's their choice of what they want to believe in. So it puts me in a very precarious position, because I don't want to dismantle his belief. That's something he has to do on his own. He's made a choice in what he wants to believe, and even though that's an influence choice, I'm not going to try to counteract it, because then that's just going to cause confusion.
Yeah.
That's gonna cause more harm than good. And with what you're saying, like, it's so imperative that people external to your own family unit respect what it is that you're trying to do in your family. Otherwise, they will cause that type of, I'm kind of choked up about it, because, it's I don't want him to have that fear.
Yeah.
But he does.
Exactly.
And it's unnecessary. And now I'm in a position where trying to counteract it, like, it's just, like I said, it's going to cause more harm. It's like telling a 5-year-old that Santa Claus doesn't exist. That their entire world's going to collapse. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, now I have to try to tiptoe around this and answer questions in a very specific way that I never wanted to be in a position that need to answer them in that way.
Yeah.
You know? So yeah, man, like the only thing I can say to that is like nip it in the bud. Like I'm not telling you what to do or anything like that, but just from my own experience of what I'm dealing with my 11-year-old. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it can get to a point where, you know, your kids are not only afraid for themselves, but they're terrified for you. And that's the worst part,
Yeah.
right? Because especially if they're younger, because, you know, psychologically kids look at their parents as like God, you know, like
Yeah.
you can do no wrong.
Exactly.
You know, and then when you have an outside influence bringing that in and saying, no, you know, they are doing wrong, that this is what they're doing wrong. And even without saying that you're doing wrong, because if you know, you're talking about Jesus and you're talking about God and you're talking about the Bible, inevitably what we do becomes wrong, becomes evil. And then now you have the question, well, why is my dad evil?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm sorry, man. Like, I mean, do you like that PS5? Like, I mean, you know, like.
Yeah. Judgment goes hand in hand with Christian ideology, and whether they intend it to or not, judgment is an inherent part of, you either believe this or you don't, and there is an inherent judgment associated with non-belief.
Mm-hmm.
And I had one of the things that really, like, you know, kind of skyrocketed me into just, you know, divesting myself of even trying to pretend anymore that I, you know, oh, I'm, you know, I'm still just this good little Christian boy, is, you know, I had my grandmother who called me sometime several months ago and basically told me that she was sad that I was the rapture was coming soon and I wasn't gonna be with them. She told me straight up, yeah, you know, the rapture's coming soon. The way she said it too was so judgmental in and of itself, because she said, well, as you know, I'm a Christian and we Christians believe blah 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 blah. I'm like, Grandma, I've been a Christian for most of my life. I know all of this stuff. Like, she's trying to educate me as if I have no concept of what she's saying. And you know, well, we believe this, and you know, the rapture is coming soon, and you know, I'm so sad that you're not going to come with us, and you know, I'm thinking about you. I want you to open up your Bible and stuff like that. And I get the intention behind it. I can sympathize with this. You know, I really want to make sure that you're okay, kind of concept, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But in my head, I was just like, you know, they already don't think that I'm they're secretly judging me all the time. And so for me to even pretend like I still align with this concept to save face for my own family, it's not doing me anything anyways, because I'm going to still get calls that I'm going to go to hell, or that I worship these other beings, or that, you know, I'm still not going to merit getting taken up into heaven when the rapture comes. So who am I trying to save face for? I'm not anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, that's fair. Like, I mean, yeah, neither am I. Anyway, I do appreciate you coming on again, man. This is supposed to be a 1-hour show. We're almost 2 hours in.
Thank you for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
No, dude, this was a great conversation, man. This is a wonderful conversation. And I'm looking forward to the other conversations that we're going to be having. Because for those that don't know, the first time we had Blake on, both of us fell into like saying, yes, we need some type of, you know, accreditation system. We need some type of standardization of knowledge and information. You know, we need to keep things consistent. And it's something I really want to build, man. And so I'm looking forward to those conversations, and seeing what we can do. So yeah. So thank you so much for, you know, coming on again. And again, guys, I wish he was more active on YouTube, but like he's generally like he's a TikTok guy. You know, so I would love to see you do more long form content, man. Like I really would. Like, I mean, your short form content's amazing. Like, I don't know how you stick so much fucking information into 3 minutes, but you do. You have a gift. You have a gift, my friend. So I can't do it, right? So, so you're primarily it's TikTok, Gentleman Occultist on TikTok, Instagram as well. You're on there, right?
Sir.
You do you have a YouTube channel? Yeah, you have a YouTube channel, don't you?
I do have a YouTube channel. I've been posting some of my short form content as shorts. I do have ideas for long form content that I do want to develop eventually. I just already have so many irons in the fire that the concept of developing long form content is not viable currently. But it's absolutely in the works.
Awesome, dude. I'm looking forward to it, man. I'm looking forward to it. Anything you make, man. Like, I mean, even throughout this conversation, I kept like videos that you made for TikTok kept coming into my head, you know, when you're talking about Paul and stuff like that. Like, I mean, so yeah, definitely very educational. Go follow him on TikTok if you guys have a TikTok account. It's worth having him in your feed. Like, I can't think of any other person on TikTok in the occult space that is able to accurately include as much information as this guy does in a 3-minute format. So yeah,
You give me too much credit, my friend. I appreciate it.
I'm just being honest, man. So yeah. So anyway, thank you all for being here. You guys are fucking amazing. We'll see you. I will see you 7 p.m. tonight for Adversary of My Adversary with Dyra and myself and Curtis Joseph and his wife Bonnie, the first occult couple that we're gonna have on the show. I'm hoping to get you and yours on here, man. So yeah, see you guys at 7 p.m. Until then, as always, hail thy fucking self. We'll see you in the next one. Peace the fuck out.